What's up, guys? Back with a brand new video. Another video with Jared and Dylan. We haven't done this in a little while, but we're back at it. With a good one. A little bit different than last year. Instead of grading predicting trades, we're grading each team's deadline, which is more realistic, and just I think it'll be better. Yeah. You guys want to say anything before you start?
Yeah, obviously we haven't done this in quite a little bit. Things have been busy school-wise. Things have been busy for me and you guys as well. But a lot of action has happened in the NHL, so I'm excited to get on here and just kind of break things down. I haven't really talked about this with you guys in quite a bit about what our predictions are moving forward. So might as well get on here after the deadline, grade what teams did, and kind of just discuss all the crazy stuff that's happened the last few weeks in the NHL.
Yeah. Dylan, you want to say anything, or we can just start?
I'll have a little ASMR. You said 6. That's all I need to hear.
I'm honestly after the deadline. I mean, in the preseason I had Tampa winning it all, and honestly,
Why is
this
it
deadline
backwards?
has made me even swap out that prediction potentially.
Okay, it's
Right.
a little bit weird that it's backwards, but okay. Yeah.
I know, it looks like a bit. I'm gonna fix it. Alright, let's go.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah. Let's just run it. So first we go with the favorite division, the Atlantic. Well, at least I think our favorite division.
No, I hate the Atlantic. I used to think that way because it had the Leafs, but now I hate the Atlantic because they have the Leafs. Because they have like all my least favorite teams.
Yeah, well, it's also
Uh,
just so clearly like arms and legs ahead of every other division in terms of how good it is. Like the
yeah.
Metro
Yeah,
is good
exactly.
too, but the Atlantic is just, at least at the top. The Atlantic it's insane. Just the fact that one of Boston, Toronto, Tampa is going to have to be eliminated in round one. It's a joke of a playoff format. The fact that, although I get why, like, geographically they're all playing in the same division, but the fact that the playoff format makes it so one of those guys is going to have to be sent home very early, it's a mess because the Atlantic Division is just
I would
such
I
a
would
strong
agree with
division.
I would agree with you, but also the Metro is too good this year.
It
And
is really good.
the only way to make it fair is if they do 1 through 16, because then at least would play a team that they actually deserve to play, and the Rangers would play a team they deserve to play, and the Devils, da da da. But um, like 1 through 16 is just gonna be like brutal, like geography wise. I mean, like the Leafs
Yeah.
could be playing like Edmonton in the first round. That's gonna be brutal, like going
Yeah, well,
3 hours each way
1 through 16
or
is
2 hours.
never gonna
It's
happen. But
too
one
much
through
though.
eight, like keeping it Eastern and Western,
One
but
through 8
doing
is
one
better.
versus eight, that would make a lot of sense. That's what literally every other sport worth its name, and that's what they do. But regardless, I
We
guess
would
let's get into doing these grades.
play
All
New
right.
York in that situation if it was 1 through 8.
Yeah, so
But
no
still,
matter what,
it's a
we'd get a
better.
good opponent, but at least it
Yeah,
would make it so we didn't know our playoff matchup in November. Like it would at
exactly.
least
Yeah,
make it so the dogfight to the end of the season would actually be entertaining. It would be, oh, this game will make the difference between us playing the Devils or us playing the Rangers or us playing the Lightning. Like even if we did
yeah,
end
right.
up playing the Lightning again, at least it wouldn't have been a guarantee since December.
Yeah, you're right. True. All right, let's go.
All right. Yeah. Let's run it. So for the first team is Ottawa. I feel like I kind of struggled with between A plus and A because both of the one trade that they did two trades. Tyler Mott, I think, is for a fourth, but the one big trade they did, getting Chikrin, which they've been getting. Kings have been too, but they've been getting for the past, I don't know, year, 2 years, something like that. So yeah, they finally get Chikrin. They get it at a cheaper price than everyone was expecting. I'm just gonna check quickly what it was.
I'm
Uh,
actually it as well.
oh yeah, okay. So it was conditional first, conditional second, and regular second. Top five. The first is top five protected, and then it becomes 2024 first, and then the second round pick is if Ottawa makes the Eastern Conference Finals. It's 2024 top 10 protected, and if the pick is top 10, then it becomes Ottawa's 2025 first round pick unprotected. Very complicated, but that was a trade. First in 2 seconds, I expected to have at least one prospect in this trade. I think we all did, but they got Chikrin at a cheaper price than everyone was thinking, and yeah, that's why I gave them an A. I feel like they deserve an A. and I don't think A+ is the right thing because I feel like it's a bit too much. But I feel like A is good.
Absolutely, I agree with that as well. I also gave them. I'm kind of debating between either an A- or an A, but I think that's definitely where you need to put them at, because this trade is something that absolutely makes them that much deeper in terms of their defensive core. The only reason I didn't give them higher when grading not just this trade but their entire trade deadline, it's the fact that they didn't really do anything else. They didn't shore up their offensive depth, or they didn't shore up their goaltending, which is a big question mark. Even if they do continue playing very strong like they have in the last little bit, and they end up making the playoffs, it's kind of hard to predict them doing a lot just based on who their goalies are. Just like I don't have all the faith in the world in Cam Talbot. So I would have liked them to at least try to get like a Corpusalo level goalie or someone like that to kind of put them over the edge in net. But at the end of the day, just looking at this trade in particular, it makes them that much stronger in terms of not only defensive play, but it makes them like it gives them an offensive guy who also is a good defenseman. He's kind of a good two-way guy. And that's absolutely someone who could insert into this Ottawa Senators lineup that started off the year terrible, but as of the last little bit has been on fire. So it definitely is something that makes them stronger. I'm giving them an A- or an A, but it doesn't exactly make them a team that you could shore in to go so far in the playoffs. So I get A- is a safe place to go.
Yeah, I like A. I like A as well. I'm gonna rock with the A. Same with you guys. There really wasn't any debate for me. I think they had that trade just puts them into the A+ category. But I didn't love how they moved Mott. I don't know if there's anything there where he didn't want to be there or whatever, but they moved him back to New York. And then obviously they had Zaitsev, who has a hefty contract, and they gave up picks to get him off their books. And I don't obviously that's a deal that's probably smart in the long run. But on paper, obviously, no, like giving up picks and a roster player isn't good. And maybe if it's going to help your team in the long run, that's great. But obviously, I think we're rating on mostly about what team situation this year. And for Ottawa, they're obviously trying to contend for a playoff spot right now. Especially taking in that chicken trade, and with that chicken trade, it was incredible value. We had build up so much build up over the last year and a half over this goddamn deal, and it's a first in 2 seconds. That's nothing. Like that's crazy. They did lose a lot of picks overall this trade deadline. It's not like they're the Leafs and they're like risking it all this year. They're a team that's young and they have players that are going to keep developing. I feel like giving up 3 seconds and a first at one deadline is a lot. Obviously, making that chicken trade, it's a great trade, but I feel like Zaitsev wasn't worthy. Or maybe if you're gonna move a guy like Mott, at least move somebody else to get a second back, kind of like the Leafs did with the Sandine deal. But and they also got Patrick Brown. I like their deadline a lot. Give me an A just because that trade was so good. But I think they're in an awkward situation now because obviously they gain they got Chikrin, but I feel like they like let sorry I can't talk. They lost a roster player or they like had the same amount. I feel like you want to gain, and as Jared pointed out, they needed to get a depth forward, and that's something that they lost in Tyler Mott. So I don't love I didn't love that move, the separate moves, but that Chikrin trade just puts it through the roof. Give me an A for Ottawa.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's the reason it's hard to give them an A+. But listen, as soon as you're getting a guy like Jacob Chikrin, it's hard to exactly argue against what they did. But I guess with that being said, we've talked a lot about Ottawa. We got to get through 32 teams. So let's move over to Detroit.
Also, one more comment before we end. If you really think about it, the Sens kind of traded Zaitsev for Chikrin in a way, because yes, they trade away Zaitsev like a sixth and a fourth, but they have like 100K cap hits difference. Chikrin is 4.6 and Zaitsev is 4.5. So yes, they did give up picks and those, but if you think about it, like if you kind of think about it, it's kind of like they did, not like fully, but kind of.
It's more just dollar for
not
dollar.
really.
They
It's just from a sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like they just filled that contract void with Chikrin's
Exactly.
contract. Like they obviously got him off the books. Which how funny is it that already two teams now have had to overpay to get Zaitsev's contract off the books, the Leafs being one of them. But regardless, it's just the fact that they filled that contract void by bringing in Jacob Chikrin, who he makes the same amount, but I wouldn't exactly look at it like that. Like, it isn't really the same thing.
Yeah. It's just from the roster standpoint. You get a defense, you lose a defense. It has nothing to do with the actual team situation. They lost a bunch of picks from those two players.
All right. Um. So we'll try to speed up a little bit for for the next teams, but the Detroit Red Wings. I have them at a B plus. I think they traded Bertuzzi. I think Bertuzzi's value. I don't know if it was that high, but they got a decent bid for Bertuzzi. Just double check what it was. It was a conditional first and a fourth. First top of 10 protected in 2024. But yeah, conditional first and a fourth. They also flipped Sunkvist, which they got last year for Nick Leddy, I
Of course.
believe. So yeah, they flipped Sunkvist for a fourth, which I like. They also get rid of Verana half retained for I don't know who this guy is, Dylan McLaughlin, and a seventh round pick. I also really like what they did with Philip Ironic. Yes, giving up Philip Ironic wasn't the smartest idea for them, but Vancouver just being dumb there gives them a conditional first and a second, which I really don't understand what the Vancouver Canucks are doing. Yes, they should be looking to get worse, but I know they need defense. They need help on defense. Ironic does help them a lot, but I don't think getting Hironic this year is smart. Maybe 2, 3 years down the line, you look to get
Let's get into
Hironic.
Vancouver later, Max.
I'm just okay, fine. We're getting to Vancouver later, but yeah, I feel like Red Wings had a decent deadline. That's why I put them at a B plus. I wouldn't say it's above a B plus. I think B plus is like the perfect for them because they made a lot of decent moves. They look to get worse, obviously, but yeah, I think that's all I gotta say for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm giving them a B plus as well. Also peeking over to Dylan slide, and he's giving them a B plus. I think it's a very fair place to put them, based on the fact that they got a lot of picks and a lot of value, but they didn't actually fill any roster spots. And that the reason for that is that they likely are not going to end up making the playoffs. So they didn't want to make a ton of changes to their roster. They could obviously do that during the offseason. What they did instead is they gave away a lot of their top guys like Bertuzzi, and they simply just flipped them for picks, and they got first round picks. They got a lot more draft picks that are going to help them be a good team moving forward. And another thing that they did at this deadline that isn't exactly a trade, and it's not considered in the same department, but it's the fact that they locked down their captain. They locked down Dylan Larkin. So I think this was just in terms of their franchise moving forward. I think they got a lot done that they needed to get done at this deadline, mainly getting draft picks, getting their captain signed down. So in general, I think it's hard to argue anything in the A's based on them not getting any big players that are going to put them over the edge. But the fact that they got a lot of contracts off the book, freed up a lot of money, and more importantly, got multiple first-round picks. I think it's a great trade deadline for them, and I think it's just a great time to be a Red Wings fan for the future. Not right now, but things are looking bright moving forward.
Yeah, I just like to point out before Dylan says something, they have they're like 4K off of having 8.6 million cap space, no LTIR used, so that's pretty good for them.
Absolutely, yeah. And it just means that when they get into the off season, they'll be able to take that money and flip it and hopefully get someone who's actually going to put them over the edge and fill that void now left by Bertuzzi and guys like that leaving their team. They also have a lot of young guys I see now looking at their lineup. Philip Zadina, who was a 2018 first round pick, who for a while wasn't panning out. Right now, he's playing on their top line. So the fact that they're finally getting some turnaround from their young guys, of course, Seider once again is having a great season. Things are a little quiet still for the Red Wings, but their prospects are starting to turn it around. So there still is a bright future, and I'd say the moves that they made at this deadline are going to help them moving forward in getting younger and getting a lot more draft picks that are hopefully going to turn into good Red Wings for them and make them a stronger team to play in the Atlantic Division that are just going to be another pain in the butt for the Leafs moving forward.
Yeah, George, I took the words right out of my mouth there. I feel like the Red Wings are a team that they kind of just chose this is not their year. I mean, they're in the race. There's a small chance they make it, and with the roster that if they make it with the roster they have, that'd be outstanding. Especially considering the amount of picks they have to make the playoffs as well as the picks. That would be a great year for Detroit. But I think they're putting themselves out of the race. It's just the one thing that didn't and I love the trades that they made. The amount of picks they got for these roster players is great. But the one thing I just don't think that gets them into the A category is that they really like gave up a lot of players. I mean, I feel like we knew Bertuzzi was going, but Ronick kind of came out of nowhere. Sungfist is a good roster player. He just kind of came. That trade kind of came out of nowhere. I feel like. I'm not sure about that, but and I know Verona was getting shopped a little bit, but still, they did not have to give up like this many roster players. Like the thing about Detroit is they're young. They already have picks. I feel like you gotta stay, you gotta like gain roster players, and what they did at the deadline, getting guys like Perron and Sherrod, they're gonna help their team. They're more veteran guys. They're gonna help their team get into the playoffs. Those are guys you're gonna want to keep around, and shipping off 4 players at the deadline, I feel like is a little bit much. I like Heronic, especially with the amount of value you got back. And I like Bertuzzi as well, but I feel like I feel like it was a little extreme that they made 4 trades to get rid of guys. It seemed like a lot.
I would counter that with there is no worse position for a team to be in than just nearly missing the playoffs and getting no value from that, getting no high draft pick for that. When you see Connor Bedard staring you in the face, why not give up an arm and a leg, absolutely tank down the standings, which they have done lately. Looking at their last 10, they're 3-6-1, so they have been losing a lot lately. Why not just go all in, give up a lot at the deadline, keep your young pieces, I'm trying to think of the word. Recoup a lot of assets and get a lot of first-round picks and draft picks back, fall down the standings, and potentially get a shot at getting at least, if not Connor Bedard, one of the top guys at this draft, get a high pick. Then you're getting a middle pick like in the teens because of that Vancouver draft pick that got back that came from the island, from New York. Why not, in my opinion, kind of trade a lot of valuable assets, but get a lot of first-round picks and a lot of draft picks back? Then all of a sudden they're going to actually plummet down the standings and get a better chance of getting a young kid that's going to put them over the edge in the future.
Yeah.
I guess so, but I feel like at this point, I mean, I can't really see Detroit. I mean, they have a winning record right now, and there are really bad teams at the bottom of the standings. And I believe the NHL changed their draft lottery format. So like guys that are like teams that are like in the top, that are like from like 16 to 11 or like have like zero chance, exactly 0% chance. So I mean, it's a weird position. I feel like they could have kept at least Verona for the long run. He's a good player. But I guess I mean I don't know. I guess you're right in some way, but definitely.
I'm looking at it right now, but last point on Detroit before we move on. They're currently like if the lottery were to happen today, they would be like the 15th worst odds. It doesn't take much to move up when there's so many teams in close company, especially right now. There are a lot of teams below them that I could see Detroit falling below. Like obviously right now they are currently above in the standings. Teams like Washington, teams like Calgary, that could shift very soon. And especially with the fact that they're giving up a lot at this deadline, getting a lot of valuable assets back, they're basically just trying to maximize their chances at getting a higher draft pick. Oh, and my mistake. Sorry, I was looking at the New York Islanders pick that Detroit got. That is what's currently 15th. Their actual pick that they own, I'm looking at it right now. It's actually 10th right now. So they actually have a 3.5% chance of getting the first overall pick. So why not blow it up? I mean, they still have their captain around. They still have a lot of valuable pieces. They still have Maurice Sider. But guys that were going to leave anyways for nothing, like Tyler Bertuzzi, why not get a first-round pick for a guy like that? Right now, they have 2 picks pretty early in the first round.
Yeah, like. Okay, I'll say one last thing and we'll move on. At this point, like this year is the Bedard tank. I know we've gone over this a million times, but it's the Bedard tank. If you're bad, if you're like mid tier, if you're mid tier and you're looking to get and like you're not gonna be getting any better, and there's teams in your division way better than you, what you trade your best players for first round picks in 2023. That's what everyone this trade deadline has been doing. Toronto traded away their first round pick, but they got Ryan O'Reilly back. Yeah, but like everyone's looking for first round picks this year. Whoever gets the first overall pick this year is set for the next 10 years, at least, if he doesn't turn out to be a bust. Yeah, but let's move on. So next we have the favorite Toronto Maple Leafs. I have them at an A. I think they did really good this year. Sucks to see that Ryan O'Reilly's on LTIR because of a broken finger. I had to deal with a broken finger, but they have more care with they had like they I know NHL has like more money, so they get to care on their players more and get the doctors every day and stuff. But yeah, Ryan O'Reilly's out, which was their big trade down and accusation. But yeah, I think it was really good for them. Oh yeah, yeah. I think it was really good for. I think what they did as a whole is really good for them. Kyle Dubas kind of looked like NHL 23 GM in this instead of just a regular NHL GM, making 6 trades this trade deadline, and 3 of them in one day on Tuesday the 28th, which is kind of crazy. Sucks that we saw Sandin go, but look, whatever you have to do, Sandin wasn't gonna get a chance. Glad that he's getting a good chance in Washington. I really like McCabe and Lafferty. I really don't know how you say it yet, but yeah,
Like Lafferty.
I really like those acquisitions. McCabe slots perfectly with Brody. I feel like maybe them on the second line and Riley and Lilligren on the first line would be a bit better because Riley's just like normally been on the first line for the Leafs. But I like McCabe and Brody playing on the line together. They're both pretty good at shutting down. They're both a good shutdown line. Yeah. So I'll let you guys talk now. I don't want to say too
Yeah,
much.
with that said, I'm agreeing as well. I'm giving them an A. I think it's hard to argue an A plus because you could say their biggest need going into this season, especially going into this deadline, was a top six left winger, and they didn't address that number one need. But it's still hard to argue against the moves they made. Obviously, as of the game against Vancouver, Ryan O'Reilly's hurt. It's a broken finger. The hope is that's going to be healed before the playoffs. But the fact that we got Ryan O'Reilly, Noel Acciari, Sam Lafferty, Jake McCabe, bolstered up our offensive depth, bolstered up our defensive depth. I think it's absolutely massive for this team. And it shows that Kyle Dubas is done waiting. He's done messing around. He's going all in. And I absolutely love the moves he made. And it really sets this team up in a position where if they can't get it done, it's absolutely no question about it on the players. Kyle Dubas has done his job. The only thing maybe I will question the moves he made is with the moves he made on Tuesday, they made sense with the mindset that he was going to flip that first round pick for a top six left winger or flip it for something else. But the fact that he traded Engvall for nothing really, and not that Engvall's great, but he still was a serviceable depth forward that was able to play on the penalty kill, and we got rid of him for nothing for a third round pick. As well as we traded Sandin, which I do think made sense because he was never going to get the opportunity to thrive in Toronto. And we got a first round pick, which is good value as well as Eric Gustafson. But I just don't think the fact that we held on to that first round pick is why I wanted the trade to be made. I wanted the trade to be made so we could get another first round pick that we could then flip out the door and get a guy that's going to put us over the edge in terms of goal scoring. So the fact that we didn't do that is still questionable. I can't give it an A plus for that reason. But it's very hard to argue against the moves that Kyle Dubas made at this deadline. I think they make the Leafs a better team today. The fact that Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty both have term, it makes us a better team moving forward. We now have Jake McCabe for another 2 years after this one, and Sam Lafferty for another whole year after this one. It just makes us a great team. They're great moves, and I really like what Dubas did here. So it's hard to argue against an A.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that as well. I'm going A as well. A lot of our predictions are the same here. Yeah, Toronto love the moves they made. Thinking back about it, I feel like that we could have done some things differently. Like we talked about that first round pick. Um, could it have been moved? But this draft class is pretty stacked. Realistically, with Dubas's drafting skills, he's made second round picks into studs. This
Look at
first round pick is
look at Ty Voigt.
realistically. Um,
He was
Yeah,
picking the sixth
very late
round.
pick.
He was picking the 6th round, and look at how it's turned out.
So at least what Dubas could do with a 6th round pick, imagine what he's gonna do with the first. He's gonna draft the next McDavid at pick 30.
Hey, he's
Get
getting trading
Bedard.
down.
Get
That's what he
Bedard.
always.
He'll get Bedard to pick 32.
If he
No,
does
he's
it,
gonna take. He's gonna take that pick. He's gonna trade it down. It's gonna be a mid-second round pick, and the guy's gonna end up being a superstar.
Exactly.
most likely.
That's
most likely.
the Dubas formula written
The
out.
Dubas
for you.
effect.
Although with this trade, after I saw the Washington Sandin's first game, that was pretty depressing. 3 assists, and his first game, of course. Yes,
The thing is, though,
And
it's going to be
it's
the same way we look back on the Mason Marchment trade. He was never going to get that level of success in Toronto.
Yeah,
You look at the position that Sandin's being played in. He's on the first power play with Ovi. Of course, he got a lot. He got, I think, 2 of them were power play assists because he's now playing on a power play with Ovechkin. He was just never going to get that opportunity in Toronto. And as sad as it is to see him go, with the fact that he was never going to end up getting a power play position with the Leafs, he was always going to be buried behind Riley. His maximum potential was going to be a second power play unit defenseman.
unfortunately.
That just was not good enough for a kid that was a former first round pick who showed a lot of potential. And I think it's another example in a long line of Dubas kind of doing right by his players. Okay, you aren't going to get this opportunity with the Leafs. We're going to unfortunately have to trade you. We're going to get a pick back. And as well, we're just going to give you an opportunity to thrive there. And you could look at his numbers moving forward. He is going to end up turning into a stud defenseman. But the question you have to ask yourself is, was he going to turn into that stud defenseman on the Leafs? And I would answer no. There was no evidence there with his time on the Leafs that he was going to be able to reach his full potential on this team, or he was going to be buried behind a lot of players. Not to mention the fact that if you look at, we aren't trying to make a great defenseman 2 or 3 years down the line. We're trying to win the Stanley Cup this year. You look at the way that Rasmus Sandin played this year. I liked him a lot. And in different flashes, he was good. But he made a lot of defensive mistakes. He did not have the trust of Sheldon Keefe. And he was likely going to end up being the odd man out. He was going to be probably scratched in game 1 of the playoffs. And why, when his value was so high, why would we then keep him just have him scratched and probably have him want out of Toronto in the offseason anyways, where we would lose him for a lot less? You might as well trade him while his value's high. And I see a lot of people turning around being like, oh, why couldn't we trade a Hall? Why couldn't we trade a Kerfoot? Why couldn't we trade a whatever? Well, they didn't have as high value as Rasmus Sandin, as much as it sucks to say because I liked Sandin a lot more than these players. At the end of the day, with the value that Sandin held, it made a lot more sense to trade him at this position than anyone else on our team, unfortunately.
And what's going to happen with this first round pick is that Boston's going to lose every game the rest of the year. They're going to miss the playoffs, and that pick's going to get Bedard. So the Leafs, it's going to work out for the Leafs in the end. But obviously,
because that's how it tends to go. You know, everything works out for the Leafs.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, I like the deadline. I feel like to make it an A+, we were missing one trade, and that was Justin Hall. He's got to be gone. I hate
He's a
seeing
no move clause for some reason. I don't know who slapped him with a no move clause where he basically gets to decide his fate.
probably
It would
Lou
be-
Lamoriello.
No, it was Dubas, and it's
Oh.
not one that a lot of people talk about. But look, Dubas gave both Kerfoot and Hall no move
Yeah,
clauses.
Lou Lamoriello
been
was
so-
Zaitsev contract.
Pardon?
Lou Lamoriello signed Zaitsev's contract, so
Yeah,
Is that-
Zaitsev's, but no. Like, these are moves that it would have been so easy otherwise if they didn't have those no move clauses. Then just flip them to like Arizona because like obviously they'd take their cap hits. Like they're trying to reach the cap floor, they'd easily take them. But right now they kind of get to decide their fate. They get to be like, no, we only want to go to a certain number of teams. And it obviously is showing that there's just isn't a trade fit there because they probably want to go to playoff teams. And I don't know what team vying for a playoff spot, vying for the Stanley Cup, is going to look at Justin Hall's defensive numbers and be like, yep, that's the guy we want.
Yeah.
So it's just so disappointing. But at the end of the day, as much as I would have liked trading those guys, I really think the move for me that would have put it as at an A+ is if we got a top 6 left winger. I think that was absolutely the biggest need. I know that Matthew Nyes, the hope is that he's going to slot in there, but I think people underestimate how big of a jump it is from college to the NHL. And as much as I have all the high hopes in the world for this kid, I'm hoping, like, no disrespect to the Minnesota Golden Gophers, but I want them eliminated so quickly so he has a lot of time in an NHL uniform at the end of the regular season to kind of get into gear and hopefully shows that he is ready to play in a playoff team and potentially even make our top 6 or at least a middle 6 wing position. But there's no evidence of that right now, so I would have a lot rather us take that first-round pick, take a Nick Robertson right now, who unfortunately had his career a little bit derailed by injuries, but he still has, I guess, somewhat of name value, and a roster player, trade him to, let's say, a St. Louis, and get the guy I've been saying we should have got the entire time. Pavel Buchnevich, who's a top 6 left winger who scores goals and is a point-per-game player 3 years in a row. That's the kind of guy for me that would have made this deadline move from an A to an A+. But regardless, it's hard to argue against the moves Kyle Dubas did. Now it's on the players to find a way to get it done with the guys that he brought in. And at the end of the day, we just got to wait and see how they do.
You were thinking Buchnevich for the days between the trade deadline and that Tuesday, I was thinking Mr. Bertuzzi, but obviously that did not pan out. So yeah, but we talked long and hard about Toronto. That's what she said. And then we'll get on to Buffalo. Sorry.
All right. We'll try to make it quicker because we're already half an hour in. So we're gonna go. Yeah, I accidentally skipped by Buffalo, so we're gonna go with Buffalo.
Good pace for us. We're doing so good.
Yeah, okay,
I
well,
ha- I
pick it
have
up.
I have Buffalo at a B. What did they do this deadline? They didn't do much this deadline. I feel.
They got
Yeah,
rid of
like,
Asplund. They got
yeah.
a
They
second
got
round
Jordan and
pick,
Greenway. That's the big thing. They got Jordan Greenway, which
which
I think
isn't that big.
yeah, but like the only thing I really like about it is that Jordan Greenway gets a new chance in Buffalo. With Minnesota, I don't think he was like liking it that much, not getting the best chances. But Buffalo, they need help on their top wings. Yes, they have Tage Thompson, but like
Center's great.
they could definitely use help on their they definitely just use help all around, and that definitely does help them on the right wings. Buffalo, I think it's Buffalo and Ottawa that are going to be fighting for that fourth seed in the East, I mean, or the Atlantic. Yeah, I think those are the teams fighting for it the most. But besides that, I think they didn't really do much, but I feel giving them a B was like fine. Greenways, I feel deserves a B. Didn't do too good, didn't do too bad. But yeah, it's already got to say about them. Not much to say about them, anyways. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm giving them a C plus. I think for a team that's as close to the playoffs as they are, only currently being a few points out, I would have liked to see them. I get not going totally all in because they still are a young team that has a very bright future, but at least do something. Reward your team for the amazing season they're having. They haven't made the playoffs in, I believe, like 11 years or something along those lines. This is the closest your team has to making it since that time. Reward them. They've had a fantastic season. Tage Thompson has been unbelievable. Rasmus Dahlin's looking like a Norris candidate right now. Reward this team, and even if it's not a massive addition, get someone who's a little bit going to put you over the edge more so than getting a guy. I forgot, like Jordan Greenway. I blanked on his name because it's just not a big name guy at all. It's a fourth line left winger that just does not really move the needle for them whatsoever. So as much as I think it's a fine deadline because they at least got some assets back. I mean, they traded Rasmus Asplund and they got a second round pick back for him. But at the end of the day, they didn't do anything else aside from getting Jordan Greenway, which is just a very meh trade for me. They didn't do a lot, and these trades, as much as they are going to give them another draft pick that they can use at the draft, they didn't do a lot. And I'm not very wowed here. I wish that their general manager, Kyle Davidson, oh, sorry, that's the Chicago general manager, but I wish their GM would have actually
Kevin
rewarded them
Adams.
for the effort that they've had.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a B minus here. I was saying points. Um I think a B minus is a little bit more fair. They made a few odd trades. I mean, trading a nice guy, a good player, and Rasmus Hasman was a little bit strange for a seventh round pick.
I don't say he's that good.
From what he's a
Not
top nine
that good,
player.
but
He's a top nine player. And Buffalo definitely needs to strengthen up their lineup. There's definitely some holes. I could have seen them getting a goaltender. Um, Luke Conan's been horrible. I believe in his first year. Obviously, there's some potential there, but if you're looking to become a playoff team, you need a goaltender. Um, and as Jared said, they're on the cusp of making the playoffs. They're kind of a team like Detroit where Detroit knew that they're unlike a team like Detroit where Detroit knew which direction they're going. They're going. There's this way is Bedard, this way is playoffs. Detroit went this way as far as they could. Buffalo kind of inched this way. They didn't do anything that is going to get them to that spot. I didn't rate
well,
that bitch at
that
9
that's the biggest thing. It's not like Detroit inch towards tanking and Buffalo inch towards going all in. They kind of stayed very stagnant. And as much as yes, I know they're not a team that's expected to do anything, so I don't expect them to make a big move. But as I said, like at least get someone notable
Yeah.
that you're gonna give to all these young kids and give like a guy like Owen Power the experience of playing next to, or a guy like Jack Quinn the experience of playing next to a proven guy that's going to at least give them a fighting chance if they do end up scratching into that second wildcard spot. Once again, I don't expect them to do anything once they get there, but at the very least, it reminds me of kind of the Leafs in the year where they were all rookies, when the big addition at the deadline, when the Leafs were a young team that finally looked like they were going to make the playoffs, is we got rewarded with, at the very least, getting a veteran like Brian Boyle. And that was such a good thing just for the development of these young players, getting to play alongside a guy like that, a proven veteran like that. And I would have liked to see a move somewhat along those lines. I don't think I was very wowed by this. The fact that the only player that they're adding into this lineup is a fourth line left winger in Jordan Greenway. It just does not scream to me that you're rewarding these kids for the amazing season that they've had as a very young team in the Atlantic Division.
And a second and a fifth too is decent, is a lot.
It's a decent haul. That's why I'm not putting them lower. But at the end of the day, it's not anything that wowed me. And at this point, with their team finally looking like they at least have a chance at making the playoffs, I would have liked to see a little bit more personally. So that's why I'm putting them at a C+.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a C+ as well. I'm taking that. Max, go ahead.
All right. I think, or I'll say one thing. I think the Leafs also got Placanich that year. I'm not just saying, just putting that in there. Okay, so let's move on. Next we have Tampa. I really don't understand what that Tanner Jeannot trade was at all. I don't see.
Tampa's an A.
I don't see the reasoning behind giving up 5 draft picks for a third line left winger. Well, yeah, on Tampa, he's third line left winger. I don't understand behind trading a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. For yes, he is young. He has potential. He's very gritty, which Tampa needs a little bit more of. But giving up that much, I'd maybe give up like a first and a third for Jeannot, maybe a bit less than that. But giving up a first, second, third, and first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, just to upgrade your third line like it was when you won 2 cups. Like, I really don't think that Tampa needs to be upgrading the third line as much as they think they should. Yes, their third line did help in both of their playoff runs and their third playoff run, making it to the conference, make it to the cup and losing to the Avs. Obviously, that's what happened last year. But yeah, I just don't see the logic behind doing that much. I also think Tampa should have gotten a better backup goalie than Brian Elliott. Brian Elliott is way out his prime at this point. As a backup goalie, it's meh. Oh yeah, they also traded Calfoot in the Jeannot trade. As a backup goalie, he's like not horrible, but they could have done better. Also, don't understand behind trading Nemesnikov if they didn't do anything else, and retaining 50% of Nemesnikov for Mike Essimont, which I've never heard of before. I don't know about you guys.
He's a gritty forward. He's pretty good.
Okay, but like
again, a depth forward, no one that's gonna put them majorly over the edge. You could argue it's kind of a replacement. Like, it's just the same level players, just both getting different opportunities on different teams.
Yeah, I just don't see the logic behind the Jeannot trade. Maybe Essimont trade was a little bit smarter, but Nemesnikov is still a pretty good depth player. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about them. Just don't think they did much that trade deadline.
Yeah. For me, I think 2 things could be true. I think, 1, these are 2 players that are going to make Tampa a more difficult team to play. Getting Tanner Jeannot and Michael Eyssimont, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but regardless, both are good physical, gritty players that are going to put them over the edge, and they're going to make them a scarier team to play in terms of their depth. On the other hand, they gave up way too freaking much for them, and this is the same thing I said in regards to them getting Brandon Hagel and trading prospects as well as 2 first-round picks. These are good players, but they're giving up a lot for them. And at the end of the day, if it helps them win another Stanley Cup, I don't think anyone is going to be complaining with the moves that Julien Brisebois made. For that reason, I'm giving them a B, because I do think these are players that are going to help them with their mission. But at the end of the day, it just simply was too much. And in regards to that Tanner Jeannot trade in particular, trading, yes, I get it, Cal Foote is a prospect from 2017, and he isn't going, like, at this point, he was not going to find success in Tampa Bay. But the fact that you're packaging him in with a first-round pick, with a second-round pick, with a third-round pick, with a fourth-round pick, and with a fifth-round pick, it just simply is way too much. And good players, but the asking price is way too high to give them a B+, an A-, an A, or an A+.
Yeah. Yeah, you go.
Tampa, I went with a C- here. Now that Max sees the lineup, now that I see the lineup, thanks to Max, this is really like after the
Look,
first line. This
look
is
at their first
not
line. Let's look at their first defense line. Who's Nicholas Perbix?
no. I know.
I've
I
A
never
know.
heard of
young
that
kid.
player before. I've never heard of that player before in my life.
Okay, well that's kind of on you. I mean, I kind of know who that is, but
Yeah, no,
um,
he's been there for pretty much the whole year, but
looking at this Tampa lineup, like this after the first like line, like this is not that good of a team, guys. Like Killorn, Paul, and Hagel is a good second line, but in on Toronto that would be a third line. On and that third line, Janot, obviously a gritty player. But you gave up way too much for a guy. Obviously, this might not be his year, but they could sign him on on a great contract, and then he'll just be amazing next year and just go back to what he was the year before. So, um, that goes into account when you look at that trade. You kind of have him for the long term. When you make that trade, even though you gave up an almost you gave up a draft class for this guy, um, but still, this Tampa team is not that good. I mean, if we can shut down these players that are pain in the asses to play against in these playoffs, like Nick Paul, like Brendan Hagel, like Corey Perry, like Sorelli, these guys that like if we can shut them down, like we could be chilling. Like I like the Leafs lineup better than this, and not to mention Hedman just got out with an injury. Currently, Chernak's out. I'm pretty sure it's day to day, but also Tampa like right now they're shitting the bed, and I love to see it. Like it's awesome to see.
I don't know.
I'm
I'm
loving to see
I'm
them.
personally I'm not holding my breath anytime soon just because Tampa Bay
Yeah,
does this. They seem to kind of take it easy in the last little bit of a season, and then they do know how to gear it up in the playoffs. And I think it's very clear to credit them, as much as they don't now have the skill necessarily in their bottom six. They know what their goal is. It's we're going to be playing Toronto in round one. We know they have a great top six. Obviously, they have a great top six as well. But they
yeah,
basically are gearing up to beat the shit out of some Toronto Maple Leafs. That's what it
yeah.
seems like their goal is. And getting Tanner Jeannot and Michael Eisman, that helps their goal. So I'm not going to say that their deadline made them worse. I personally disagree with that.
Definitely
I
a
think it
better
actually
team.
makes them a very much a harder team to play. And looking at their bottom six, they have two guys that are good offensively, that being Sorelli and Ross Colton. But beyond that, Jeannot, Eismont, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, as well as Corey Perry, those are some guys that I am scared to play in the playoffs. So I'm not going to say that this deadline didn't help them with their goal. But I just think two things can be said, and they gave up a lot for that. And
Yeah,
will it help them win another Stanley Cup? It actually is possible. It could. I don't know if I see it happening anymore. I do think they should have geared up a little bit more offensively, at least in terms of the bottom six. But hey, listen, I'm not the one sitting there with 2 Stanley Cups and 3 Cup final appearances in the last 3 years. So I do think Julian Breezeball has earned a little bit of benefit of the doubt with the moves he's made previously, is
yeah.
my opinion. But I guess that's the last thing I'll say on Tampa, and let's move on.
I just want to add really, really quickly. Tampa, they definitely got better, but they are sacrificing a lot for a guy that's gonna help them. That's obviously gonna help them get better this year. They're a better roster than they were before the trade deadline, but I just obviously they're sacrificing their future for this guy, who might not pan out. He might, but he might not. I'm really hoping he doesn't. So yeah, we'll take it out.
In
Max, take it
fairness,
away.
though, that's what sometimes a Stanley Cup contender has to do. They
Yeah.
have to mortgage their future a little bit. You look at the Leafs are doing it. You look at a lot of teams doing it. Sometimes you have to give up a lot to get guys that are going to help you in the now. They aren't worried about their team 4 years down the line when a lot of their top guys either retire or leave. They are worried about winning one more Stanley Cup with this core. And I don't think they're worried about those first, second, third, fourth, fifth round pick, as well as a prospect that was never going to pan out for them. So I do think it's explainable, but it still is an absolute heist, and Nashville won that trade. But with that said, I think let's get into the other Florida team, in my opinion. I think let's talk about Florida, which did anyone even tell them the deadline happened? They
I
didn't
don't. I
do
don't think so.
anything.
I don't
They
think
they did not do a single thing. So I mean, I'll let Max get into it with his grade, but I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
pretty evident by my tone of voice what I'm giving them, because they were in the mix of bubble teams that were right outside of a playoff spot, and they could have decided to gear up. I think probably they were told, their general manager, Bill Zito, was probably told, hang up the phone. We don't want another repeat of what happened last year where they gave up an unprotected first-round pick for Ben Sherrod. So maybe that was it. He was maybe duct taped a little bit and told, do not pick up that phone. But I don't know. They did not do anything at this year's deadline.
Literally
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, there's not much to say about what the Panthers did this deadline. The last trade they had was December 19th, acquiring Giovanni Smith in a 3-team trade with the Panthers. They're the Panthers with the Ducks and Red Wings, which like it's horrible. And yeah, like you said, the trade like the Ben Draw trade, like they really didn't. They really just like I have no idea what they were thinking in that Ben Sherrod trade, which was just horrible in my opinion. But yeah, so yeah, there's not much to say besides that. Just Florida didn't do anything at all. They're the definition of a mid team in my opinion. Didn't do anything. Didn't change anything. Got Aaron Ekblad, Alex Barkov, Matthew Kachuk. Reinhardt's having an off year. They have decent depth, but I just don't see them doing much. Bobrovsky's doing meh, getting paid 10 mil for the next 4 years. That's all I really gotta say.
Yeah, and for the same reasons you mentioned, I mean, I'm giving them a D- and probably even an F. I mean, there's no debating it there. Might even just go with the F for Florida, do some alliteration there because they did nothing. I mean, this team had enough assets there that they could have tried. I'm not saying go all in again, trade your entire future for Claude Giroux and Ben Sherrod again like they did last year. That disaster didn't age so well. But it doesn't mean the overcorrection needs to be not doing anything. They did zero. Like, literally, were not involved in a single deadline move. Even just getting, like, a bottom six edition. I mean, even if they did, like, what Buffalo did, getting a Jordan Greenway, it wouldn't be great, but at least it would be something. They did nothing. They did zero. And it's a joke. And the fact that they do have such a strong top six, but or at least a top line, and aren't rewarding them with anyone at all, aren't rewarding them with any bottom six depth, aren't rewarding them. I mean, it reminds me of the stuff we said about Edmonton, and even Edmonton, Ken Holland got the wake-up call finally to address defense, bottom six, and whatever.
Yeah.
Florida did zero of that.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead quickly. I'll just make it quick. The Panthers really just kind of an embarrassing trade deadline. You want to do something here. I mean, you can't go in the direct like I talked about before. You can't go in the direction of Bedard because you have because you don't have draft picks. So you have to obviously go in the direction of playoffs, and doing that. And to do that, you get a player like Tanner Jeannot, like Ryan O'Reilly. Some of these roster players, you gotta do something. And Florida here, I know you don't want to make another bad decision, lose another draft pick or two, but at least throw in a fifth. I mean, a guy like Rasmus Asselin, who would help them a bunch, was traded for a 7th-round pick. They couldn't even do a deal like that. It's just embarrassing. The Panthers are really, really screwed for the future.
Absolutely. And I just want to add before we move on to the next team, if that pick ends up, because they're right now they're in a 12th place position, Florida, like 12 in terms of one being Columbus, like they are the 12th worst team in the NHL. If they fall one place, they will be eligible where that Ben Sherrod draft pick might end up like it will be in the mix to end up being the first overall.
That's hilarious, honestly.
And for 1 year of Ben Sherrod, no protection. Literally, that's
not
I
even
always say.
That's...
Yeah, exactly. Literally, 3 months of Ben Sherrod.
They don't have their first-round pick until 2026.
Yeah, exactly. They gave it up for 3 months of Ben Sherrod, and they might lose one of the best generational prospects that they will be in the mix to get that guy. And even if not, this is a fantastic draft. And I'm not saying you, as many other teams in the NHL have shown, it's not that these picks in this year will be untradeable. But they traded a first-round pick in the 2023 draft a year ahead of time with no protection whatsoever. Even the Tampa Bay Lightning, when they traded a 2024 pick, they're like, chances are we'll be a great team again, but we don't know what's going to happen next year. We don't know who's going to get injured. We don't know what's going to happen. So they said, okay, we're going to put a top 10 protection on that. Because it's just so simple. Every team in the NHL does that with trades. And for some reason, Bill Zito's just like, no, we're going to win the President's Trophy this year. He basically was like, yeah, we're for sure going to be good next year, so I'll just trade that first-round pick for a defenseman that isn't even good at all. He's just a big-body defensive guy. And the fact that that is blowing up in this way, it's poetic almost. It's ridiculous. It might be the worst trade if it ends up being, especially like a top 3 pick. That might age into the worst trade in recent NHL history. That is brutal.
All right, we're back. Nothing for you, but we just have to do something really quickly. Moving on, I think we all can agree with this one for Boston. I have an A plus. I think they set everything they needed. Goaltending was already set from the start, is pretty obviously. They helped so much with their defense. Last year, going into the last year's deadline, their defense wasn't looking amazing. With only really McAvoy, their only good defense, but they picked up Hampus home last year, and this year they pick up Dmitry Orlov. What does he do? He puts up 9 points in 3 games. Like, you can't make this up. It's the Leafs' luck, the Bruins' luck. Orlov's been insane. They picked up Bertuzzi, which is really good for their top 9, and Hathaway, really good depth piece. I think there's nothing much else to say. Bruins kind of had a perfect deadline for what they end up needing. I think if the Leafs got Bertuzzi instead, I'd put the Leafs at a A plus, but we all have our dreams. So yeah, I'll let you guys talk about it.
Yeah, for me as well, Boston is the only A plus I have. I think this team addressed every single thing they needed to do at this deadline. They got better in terms of their bottom 6 scoring by getting Bertuzzi, but they also improved their defensive pairings mightily by getting Dmitry Orlov, who obviously early returns on that. You can't make your entire analysis based on the first few games, but just looking at the early returns, he has been fantastic offensively for them, which I don't even think is what they really anticipated when they got him. It just makes them a much scarier team moving forwards. The fact that they're at least their top 4 pairs on D are absolutely fantastic, and don't count out Derek Forbort or Connor Clifton either, that are just gonna pummel the life out of every opponent. But as well, their bottom 6 scoring is absolutely insane now. Only adding Tyler Bertuzzi to that, it makes this team an absolutely massive team. They are insane. They're looking right now like, at the very least, they're not my personal prediction, but they're a very easy favorite to go far in this playoffs and probably the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. And it's understandable why. They were a fantastic team, and they're only adding to that right now with these fantastic additions. So, unbelievable team. A plus deadline. There's not much more they could have done here.
Yeah.
I have A plus as well. They addressed their needs like to perfection. They got another defenseman. They got a gritty winger. They got 2 gritty wingers if you count Hathaway and Tyler Bertuzzi. Did give up a lot of picks to do it. They gave up. They had to get rid of 2 firsts, a second, and a third. But right now at this stage, we've already won over 6 teams. That is the I guess the value is the word I'm looking for. The value you need to give up to get players like this who aren't top notch players, and it's kind of ridiculous that Boston almost could have gone could have gone Chikrin with the amount of the amount they got rid of for Hathaway and Orlov. But anyways, yeah, Boston. Uh, they addressed the needs to perfection. They got a young guy in Shane Bowers from the program. Bertuzzi trade was really good. Really wish the Leafs picked him up. But this team is just so unfairly stacked. Are they too good to be true? That's the real question. I don't know. We will find out in the playoffs. Florida last year was too good to be true. A lot of teams who are first in the league are usually too good to be true. So we'll see at we'll see in the playoffs this year if they can hold up to their standard. I would love to see Buffalo or a Pittsburgh or New York to beat them in the first
That
round.
would be insane.
That would just be music to my ears. Watching every game, or the final game of that series would just be. I would cry, even probably more tears of happiness than the police in the first round.
Okay, now you're pushing it a little bit.
I was in a little far. I was joking, but still, I hate the Boston Bruins with all my heart, and we'll move on to the next one.
All right. So next we have the Montreal Canadiens. They did 3 trades, 2 if you're not really counting the Benino. I think I saw something that Montreal was kind of desperate to just go in any 3-team trade to get draft capital, which they did end up doing in the Benino trade, but didn't do anything for them. Got them signing rights to some guy named Tony Sun and a 5th round pick. They traded they traded Nate Schnarr for Frederick Allard. I've heard of Nate Schnarr before, but I don't know what Frederick Allard is. And then they also did the Gurionov Dodonov trade, which is definitely the biggest trade that they did. At this point, I don't know, because that trade was pretty good for both teams, in my opinion. Gurionov wasn't working out the best in Dallas after his one good year there. Uh, Montreal retained 50% on it, which was good for them, which was good for Dallas. I think Gurionov's. I think Dodonov's been playing decent for Dallas lately. Gurionov gets a new chance in Montreal, gets to show what he can do without having to worry about Jason Robertson stealing a spot and other players like that. But yeah, there's not much else to say about the Habs. I gave them a C minus. I was at a D. I gave them a D at first, but I forgot about the Donov trade. I feel like C minus is not bad, but just didn't do much. And to get worse, which I think they should have been doing, like trading Edmondson, I think would be really good for them. Yeah, definitely. Trading Edmondson would be very good for them. Other players as well. Hoffman, they could have tried to get off the books. Josh Anderson could have been good to get off the books. So yeah, I think there's not much else to say about that. And yeah, that's it for me.
Uh, for me, I'm giving them a C. I don't think they wowed me necessarily. They didn't make a lot of moves, but the one major move they made, getting Denis Gurianov, I think he has enough potential for me in the fact that now he's going to be given a major opportunity here on a team that's a lot worse than Dallas. The fact that already early on in his Habs career, he's playing right now top line right wing. So the fact that he's getting this opportunity, I do like the gamble they made here, flipping him for Dodanov. I like the fact that there wasn't really a lot else involved. It was literally just a classic hockey trade, a 1-for-1. I personally am giving the win to them in that trade, and that is the reason that I'm bumping this team up. Similar to Max, I previously, if it wasn't for this one trade, probably would have had their trade deadline grade being lower. But because of this one trade, I actually do like what they did here, and I don't think they did a lot at the deadline. I think a lot of people are very underwhelmed about what they did, especially with the expectation that they would maybe follow suit based on what Detroit's doing a little bit and kind of flip a lot of assets out the door, try to get even more draft picks ahead of this draft. But you know what? They stuck to their guns. They're keeping with their team. They know that they don't need to do a whole lot to make them worse because they're already pretty damn bad. And they're just going to basically get a guy who's young, has an opportunity to succeed. He does have a contract expiring after this year, but hopefully for him, the hope is for Montreal, they'll be able to extend him after this year. And the fact that they're getting this guy on their team who showed a lot of promise over in Dallas, he's a good shooter, he has good hands. I do like him better than Evgeny Donatov, and I do like this move for them. So I in general, like, I'm giving them a C. I think it's a fair place to put them, and I think they had an okay deadline. I think they did exactly what they needed to do, but also did not wow me.
I'm gonna go with the C, but if your C is for your rating, I guess, the way you said it, then mine should be lower because I really don't. I was really unimpressed with the Montreal trade deadline. Gurionov trade was great. I think it's brilliant. Got a forward who's arguably better than Dodonov, who's younger, and either he's. Do you guys know his contract situation? I don't know
2.9 expiring at the end of this year.
he must be an RFA, right?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah. Expired status RFA.
Okay, so that means there's a good chance he's going to be Canadian next year. And yeah, I just thought that was a great trade, but the Bonino trade, obviously they did just about nothing. Um, they got a small prospect in a fifth, and then there was that prospect for prospect field in LA. I would have loved to see them move some players if I'm a Habs fan. I love that they didn't do what they were supposed to do that deadline because you're trying to tank for dark. Like you're Montreal, you have a situation where you make trades and you could have Connor Bedard on your team next year. But what they did, that's not what they did. They arguably got better on their roster with Gurianov. They could have traded Anderson. They could have traded Edmondson. I thought that he was guaranteed gone, but I guess not. You could also put these players. You could also scratch these players, I guess, for the rest of the year. Make your team worse. But really, like you could have gone value for these players. The way the trades were, Edmondson could have gone for a first round pick. And the Habs really, I think, missed out on an opportunity to get a better draft capital, and to make their team worse for Bedard. Yeah, I really don't like I really don't like Montreal's deadline in the way you put it, Jared, with and you kind of were liked it, like were mid about it, and you had them as a C. I'm gonna downgrade Montreal to a D plus because that I really just really disappointing at trade deadline for them. But as a Leafs fan, seeing it in the direction they went is like a really awkward deadline. It's perfect for us obviously, but D plus for me, and then we'll move on to the Metro.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. So next. Oh, you have to say anything or?
No. I absolutely. I think all that's said about Montreal is kind of out there. I mean, they didn't have a great deadline. They didn't do a lot. They made one decent move, but I mean, you could even argue, like Dylan said, it might have even made them better. So there's a lot of debate there. But in general, I think it's one of those deadlines where they kind of played it safe. They did whatever. They didn't wow me. They didn't absolutely S the B either. They didn't shit the bed either. So I think they did fine. You know, it was a very meh deadline for me. I think a C is a fair grade. But with that being said, let's move over to Metro.
All right. So next we have. I'm missing a lot. Next we have the Carolina Hurricanes. I put them as an A minus. I think they did pretty good this deadline. Took a chance on Jesse Fieldy-RV, who just can't perform in Edmonton over the past few years, but giving him a new chance in on the Hurricanes of Carolina could definitely be good for them. Only gave up a mid-tier prospect, so not a horrible trade for them. And getting Shane Gostisbehere for a third-round pick, I'm really surprised they only gave up a third-round pick in 2026 for Shane Gostisbehere. I thought he was gonna go for like at least a second, maybe a little bit more. I don't know, something like that. But I think getting Shane Gostisbehere for that cheap, I don't really know what Arizona was doing there. They didn't really win that trade at all. But yeah, Hurricanes take a chance on Fully RV, help out their middle to bottom six, bottom. Well, you could arguably say bottom nine forward group, and get another defense, which they kind of did need. So yeah, I think A minus is pretty fair for them.
For me, I'm going with a B plus. The only reason I'm not going higher than that is because they didn't, compared to what a lot of other teams, especially teams they're going to have to go through if they want to win a Stanley Cup in the Metro, compared to what other teams did, even in the Eastern Conference, by gearing up guys like Timo Meyer going to the Devils, guys like Patrick Kane and Tarasenko going to the Rangers. They didn't do anything to that level, and for that reason, it's harder for me to argue that they should be anywhere in the A's. But absolutely, I think they did everything they needed. They took a flyer on Jesse Puljujärvi, who, he had a lot of promise ahead of his draft in 2016. Ended up getting picked fourth overall. Showed some flashes of brilliance here or there, but never really found a fit in Edmonton. Hey, it's a fresh start on a better team where he's going to be less relied upon to make much of an impact. So I do like that move a lot, and the fact that they didn't have to give up a lot for a guy with a lot of potential still is a good move. And then as well, the fact that they got Shane Gostisbehere, a guy who's going to bolster up their defensive core, and only had to give up a third round pick for it. I think these are all great moves in terms of grading what they actually did. I think a B plus is fair, but I do wish they would have done a little bit more. They're a great team. They're fantastic defensively. They do have a great top six. But I think one more, even if not a superstar, one more big name guy inserted into their top six or into a middle six position would have absolutely put this team over the edge. And they just didn't really do that one move that really bolstered them up to the point where I'm ready to say they're going to absolutely dominate the Metro. So for that reason, I personally am just going, I think B plus is a fair place to put them.
I'm gonna go with an A here. Kind of a bold take, I guess, between you two. I really loved Carolina's deals. To get a guy like Gostisbehere for a third round pick is ridiculous. He had such a good year last year, and this year he's still putting up good stats. He's an offensive defenseman. Carolina is more of a defensive minded group, but last year they had D'Angelo who kind of went crazy. I think he was a point per game for a lot of the season, and Gostisbehere's already got some like a few points in his first few games in Carolina. Clearly, it's a great fit there. Not sure who he's playing with, but yeah, what a pickup for him to get a third round pick.
Jalen Chatfield. He's a third pairing guy, but as you said, it just kind of bolsters up their D core and makes them a lot deeper in terms of their defensive depth.
Yeah, and then also Puljujärvi taking a flyer on him, like you said. I think he's an expiring RFA, so you keep him, and then he expires, but then you keep him which is good. I mean, he's young. You still have an opportunity, and if he plays good, you could keep him. And he's not going to resign for $3 million, but you're going to have him for less. You're going to have him for less amount of money. He's still young. He's still got potential. If he has the right fit, who knows? Where he can. He showed signs of greatness. But then again, that was on Edmonton. Who knows what his future holds? On the Oilers, he had chances to be with Connor McDavid, and he never really showed his true self. Look at guys like Richard Hopkins and Hyman this year, who are playing with Connor McDavid, and they're having career years, and that's because of Connor McDavid. And Leon Draisaitl too, who's had an effect on his teammates. And Jesse and Puliarvi is with those guys, so maybe there is no hope for this guy. But you might as well take a shot. You gave them not. I mean, I don't know about this prospect, but um, that's not that much value to get him. And then I love that cost spare trade, but I think to separate it from an A plus, and I think it's on the brink of A minus, is really what Jared said is they really should have gone out for all out for a guy like Meyer. I think like if I'm looking, I'm gonna look at Carolina right now. I think Carolina has, yeah, they do. They have a first, second, and third in all of their next three drafts. Like they have what they need, and they have prospects too to go out and make these guys and get a guy like Patrick Kane or a Timo Meyer. They have so many available players
Okay.
to get these guys. So I think it definitely should have gone out there and made a move like that. But with the trades that they did make, I loved it. But yeah, obviously that night they should have taken that next step. I got an A for them.
Alright. So next up, I don't. I saw you guys had different opinions, but in my opinion, I think this is kind of a no-brainer. Putting Rangers at A plus. Yes, they didn't upgrade their decor, which they could have done, but getting two major guys in Tarasenko and Patrick Kane in the same deadline, giving up Bly, uh, defense prospect first and fourth for Tarasenko, and then giving up even less for Patty Kane, with only giving up a conditional second, which becomes a first if New York makes the conference finals this year, and a fourth. I feel like the Patrick Kane trade was kind of pushed out, and New York wasn't going to give up any more, but Chicago couldn't really do anything about it, so they kind of had to do the trade. But yeah, I really like this trade deadline for them. Helps their forward core so much. Like it's kind of crazy how much better their forward core is now. Picking up two arguably top 30 to 40 guys, and Panarin and Tarasenko, slotting Tarasenko on the top line with having your
Ian
first
Kane.
line. No, first line. With having your first line Capo, right wing being Capo Caco to being Vlad Tarasenko, and then having your second line with being Lafreniere, was Lafreniere on the second line.
He was on
Um
the third line, always with Philip Hedl and Capo Caco. They had like the
um
kids line.
oh yeah. So then New York had, I'm not sure who New York had in the first line, but yeah, uh, big step up helps. Made both their top two right wing lines amazing. I think this is kind of a hot take, but I feel like New York's second line should be on their first line, and New York's first line should be on their second line. With Arvitemi Panarin and Patrick Kane being playing together again, that's really good. But I feel like they both deserve to be on the first line, and Chris Kreider doesn't. I don't know if Chris Kreider is the best him having on the first line compared to Panarin having him on the first line. But besides that, yeah, really good deadline. Could have helped if they got another defenseman, like I said before, like maybe a Joel Edmondson, which would have helped them a lot. But besides that, that's why I had them an A plus.
Yeah, well, for me, first I'm going to answer your thing about the fact that Chris Kreider is currently their top line left winger. That's just something they've done all year long, and even though I'm not opposed to them trying it, because I do agree in terms of name value, their second line is a lot better. But considering how they've been pretty strong all year long, I think it's kind of a situation where they're like, if it's still working, if it's still getting us the wins, why break what's already working? So
If it
in
ain't
my
broke,
opinion,
don't
I
fix
think
it.
yeah, exactly. So the fact that they're able to deploy Patrick Kane, Artemi Panarin, and Vincent Trocheck in second line minutes is pretty remarkable, honestly. And the fact that they got in both Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane are phenomenal, and they make this deadline great. But I think, Max, when you were speaking, even though you gave them an A+, you still had a lot of reasoning, like they did not do anything to address their defense. So personally, me and you were allowed to disagree. I think that is the difference between a team that was an A+, like Boston, for example, who addressed both offense and defense, and a team like New York, who currently right now is deploying Ben Harper as a second pairing defenseman. Like their decor should have been addressed at this deadline, and they obviously opted to just bolster up the right wing core and the right wing depth, which is, I'm not saying it was the wrong move getting Tarasenko and Patrick Kane, but the fact that their current left side on defense is Nico Mikkola and then Ben Harper is pretty telling how easily their decor kind of is shored up beyond Adam Fox and Jacob Trouba. Like they don't have a lot of defensive depth whatsoever. And I get it, you're building on what you're already good at. You're bolstering up your offensive core. You're making that top six arguably probably the scariest in the entire NHL. But I think with them not addressing their defensive depth, there still are too many holes for me to say it was an A+ worthy deadline. But that's not to say it wasn't fantastic, because it absolutely deserves an A. It was really good.
Look, but like the Rangers defense is still good. Like Keandre Miller, he's out. I don't know why he spat on Drew Doughty, but that's what he did. And he deserved to get him suspension for that, which he gets. And they also have Ryan Lindgren on IR right now, I believe. So yes, their decor isn't even that bad, but they still could have used some help. So yeah, I still put them A+. Done.
Thing is, even with Ryan Lindgren healthy, as it's currently slotted in, Ben Harper would still be a top six defender. And if one of these defensemen gets injured, they're now going to have to call up guys from the AHL.
Yep.
They have no depth in the case of someone getting injured. And you compare it with the Leafs, how we have 7, 8, 9 guys that like are ready to go and are NHL at the very least. I'm not saying they're fantastic, but in the very least they're NHL caliber defensemen. And if someone goes down with injury, we can easily slot in another one of those guys. The Rangers don't have that luxury whatsoever, and I do think them not addressing this defensive depth was a mistake. But not to like it's not to say that getting these two great players isn't going to help them, because it absolutely will. And with Shesterkin back there, they're a little bit deciding, okay, we didn't need to go all in on a defenseman because we know how good our goaltender is. And I guess that was obviously the decision there, is that they were just going to go to bolster up what they're already good at, which is their offensive core. But I do think it's a little bit questionable, and I can't justify giving them an A+ there.
What'd you do, Jared? What was your raw?
I gave them an A. I just don't think A, maybe like A- to an A, just because I do think it is a big problem that they still have Ben Harper as a second pairing defenseman right now.
Yeah, and you said it. I'm going A-. I think the mood. Obviously, you made two big trades recently with Kane and Tarasenko. I'm gonna try to make this quick. You made two big trades with Kane and Tarasenko, and obviously there were some good trades. You gave up a lot, but to get to get two stars, that's the price you're gonna pay. But they really but their offense, I think, already was really stacked. Without those two guys, they have a really good top six. And now their top six is even better, and it's like Jared said, and you said too, Max, one of the scariest top sixes in the NHL, if not the scariest top six. Um, and they're gonna be paying in the ass to play against, but they traded Vitaly Kravtsov for a seventh and a mid prospect. The Mott trade was kind of random, came out of nowhere. Just to get a fourth line left wing, which they don't really need. And yeah, they didn't address their defense at all. Like that's a big problem. That's a problem the Leafs have, that they have too much. It's the complete opposite for New York. They are in serious trouble defensive wise. And because they addressed needs that weren't really needs, and did not address needs that weren't that they needed to address, I'm gonna give them an A-, even though those trades were just so because adding two talents like those was huge for the team. But the defenses are going to be a liability in the playoffs, because if you look at teams that have made it before, they've had really good defensive players. Adam Fox is not really known for his defensive skill; he's known for his offensive skill. So you need somebody who's going to shut them down. Who's going to shut guys like Timo Meyer, Jack Hughes, Sebastian Aho down. And no, that's something a liability right now. So yeah, New York, I'm going A- here. I'm gonna have to disagree with Max completely. But yeah, we're gonna make it quick.
All right. Yeah. So we all had our opinion on that. For the Devils, I feel like it's kind of the same I feel like it's kind of the same. I also had them as an A+. Yes, it was a different situation than what happened with New York, but I really like what they did. Getting Timo Meyer for, not gonna lie, kind of cheap. Like, yes, they did give up a lot, but I feel like everyone was expecting to get them to get more, the Sharks to get more for Timo Meyer. Like, they got Andreas Janssen, the Sharks got Andreas Janssen, which has been playing in the AHL the whole season. Fabian Zetterlund, which yes is a good addition. He's a rookie this year. Two more prospects, and then conditional first, conditional second, and seventh. Look, I expected them to get a little bit more than that. Like, I expected them maybe get better prospects. Kind of surprised, like, Nemec or Holtz wasn't in the trade, which are their top two prospects, arguably. I just really
Hughes.
think, that it's, oh yeah, Luke Hughes, well, top three prospects, arguably. Yeah, I just really think that was a really good trade for the Devils. Also got Meyer at half retained, and also trading for Curtis Lazar for a fourth. Yes, wasn't big at all, but I feel like that really helped with their depth. New Jersey kind of has problem with depth, but getting Curtis Lazar kind of maybe fitting where Fabian Zetterlund was, because Zetterlund was good for their depth. But yeah, I think it was a decent trade, and that's why I had this trade deadline as an A+. They didn't address their defense, but I feel like they didn't need to as much as the Rangers did. Like, they have a decent defense. Looking at their defense here, they got Siegenthaler, Hamilton, Graves, Marino, and Val Severson. Like, having Damon Severson, yes, he's not as good as he used to be, but on the third line, right D, that is pretty good. Ryan Graves also a good acquisition from, I think it was 1 or 2 years ago now, from the Avs. I really like their D pairing. I feel like they could have maybe helped it up a little bit, getting a guy that would help a little bit more. But I feel like it was still a really good deadline for the Devils, and that's why I put them at an A+.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go with an A. I think for similar reasons as you mentioned, they still like that Timo Meyer trade in a vacuum individually was a great trade for them. I do actually don't think it was so bad for the Sharks. At least I don't think it was as bad as people were saying. I think they got a decent return, but don't get me wrong, the fact that the Devils were able to acquire a guy as good as Timo Meyer without losing any of their top prospects was fantastic. It bolsters up their depth. It adds a fantastic winger into their already very strong, at least top six. So I think that's very good for them. The only thing I will say is with them, I'm not as worried about their defensive core. What I am worried about, what I do think they should have at least tried to do, is acquire a backup goalie, because right now Mackenzie Blackwood is already injured. And if Vitek Vanacek, anything happens to him, their backup goalie right now is Akira Schmid, who I'm not even sure who that is. And they definitely do have some concerns in net. Not that Vitek Vanacek is bad. He's a good goalie, and he's been having a good year. But for example, right now with the playoff series that's very likely, with it being New York Rangers versus the New Jersey Devils, it's kind of hard to argue the Devils beating the Rangers with the fact that the Rangers have Igor Shesterkin and they have a goalie tandem of Vitek Vanacek and Akira Schmid. So I do think I would have liked them to do a little bit more, but that Timo Meyer trade is going to make them fantastic. And the fact that he's going to be playing alongside Jack Hughes, that top six is going to be dominant. I really like this deadline for them. I'm giving them an A, not an A+, but it was a very good deadline.
Yeah, I'll go with an A as well. Love the trade. They could have made some extra moves to make their team a little bit better. I still don't think they're a better team. If they want to compete with New York and Carolina, and they consider themselves a cup contender, you got to make another move. Even though you got one of the biggest guys available in the at the trade deadline. Yeah, really like their move. Really like that trade for me, but um, I can't just put them at the A+ level yet. I just don't see them there. So I gotta go with an A. I gotta go with an A.
All right. Looks like we've got 10 minutes left in the Zoom, so we'll try to speed it up as much as possible. Next, we got the Columbus Blue Jackets. I put them as a C+. They traded Gavrikov and Korpisalo, which was not a bad trade. They didn't really get like too much. Obviously, Quick, kind of sad. The LA traded Quick, kind of just ruined what happened. Like, well, not ruined, because what happened would happen, but like, Quick was super loyal, and they just traded him just to get two other players, which they could have just easily done differently. But yeah, besides that, also got a first and third, and then traded Voracek's contract to Arizona, and then also half retained Quick for Michael Hutchinson, Leafs legend, and a seventh round pick.
Yeah, for me, I'm going with a C minus. I just don't think they did anything major. Obviously, getting rid of Gavrikov and Korpisalo and recouping some of those assets is good for them. But to be honest, I just was not very wowed by any of the moves they did. I honestly think the fact that they're packaging a starting goaltender and a good defenseman, which don't get me wrong, the media is milking how good Gavrikov is. He's not that great, but I still think with how much the talks, like how much at least it was put out there that his value was, and the fact that they paired him with a starting goaltender, I do wish they got a little bit more. And even the fact that they then flipped Jonathan Quick to Vegas, I think they probably could have gotten more in that deal as well. I do think they were kind of a middleman almost, where a lot of teams were going through them to make moves, like Vegas going through them to get the goalie that they're likely going to be running with in the playoffs. But the fact that they were this middleman and a lot of they flipped out a lot of talent but didn't get so much for them. I mean, they got a decent return on these moves, but nothing that wowed me and nothing that I really feel like they're going to be looking back moving forward like, yep, it was a great move losing both a or at least a middle pairing defenseman and our starting goalie for a first round pick. I just don't think they did all that great. And with that being said, like, I think a C minus is pretty fair place. Maybe a C. I think they did what they had to do, but nothing amazing.
Yeah, I went with a C plus. Kind of a mid trade deadline. They got rid of Gavrikov and Korpisalo, and they got some good value back for him. But after that, but aside from that, the trades were kind of average to bad in the middle there. They got rid of Nyquist for little to nothing. They got rid of that Voracek contract, which was pretty bad for 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 Gillies, and they also got rid of the six. So good on them for not giving that much. But yeah, so I got a C plus, kind of a mid trade deadline from Columbus, not expecting them to do much. They got rid of they made their team worse. And we could see them having number 98 or 16, whatever his number is, next year. And we'll see, I guess, the draft lottery. But yeah.
All right. So next off, we got the New York Islanders. I gave them maybe a little bit too high, but I give them an A. I feel like they kind of deserve it. I don't even know if you can count Bo Horvat as a deadline acquisition because it was like a month before the actual deadline. But yes, Bo Horvat was big for them, getting him at 25% retained, giving up Beauvillier, which hasn't really performed for them the past 2 years. Achu Ratu, which is kind of horrible for them because he's been playing pretty good. He played some NHL minutes as well, and also an unprotected first, not an unprotected, conditional first this year. That's top 12 protected, becomes unprotected first next year. I think yes, I think it's a good deadline. Also, getting Engvall for basically nothing, which not looking the best on Dubas' part, but Leafs had to get rid of someone to get Murray back, and that was end up being Engvall. We already talked about the Leafs a lot, so I won't talk about them again. But yeah, not a bad trade. Not a bad trade for Horvat. Definitely bolsters up their offense. Maybe they could have helped on the defense a little bit if they were trying to get better. But besides that, I think it was a pretty good deadline for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the fact that you look at right now their top six and even their first line, they have their two. I would say that Horvat counts as a deadline accusation, at least for the purposes of conversation. So the fact that their two biggest additions of this last little bit of 2023, at least, Bo Horvat and Pierre Engvall are playing together on a top line. It's pretty telling that these guys are not just being inserted into the lineup in depth roles, but they're guys that are right now playing prominent positions on the island. Do I think Pierre Engvall should be a top line forward? Probably not. But the fact that they only gave up a third round pick for him and right now he's playing top line right wing, it's showing that these guys are being inserted into the lineup and are kind of finding value right away. I'm giving it a B plus. I think they had a pretty good deadline. I don't think they did anything that super wowed me, and I actually do think in the case of Bo Horvat, what they gave up could end up aging badly. Not as badly now that he signed an extension on the island. It's not like he's gonna it's not like they traded all their assets and then Bo Horvat could end up leaving in the offseason. He's signed, he's locked down. But I still think they gave up quite a bit for him, giving up their best prospect for a guy that chances are is never going to be as good as he's playing right now. This season is kind of an outlier in his entire career. But nonetheless, I think they had a good deadline, not a great deadline. I think a B plus is a fair place to put them.
Yeah, and I went with a B plus as well. They had a good trade. Beauvillier turned out to be pretty effective in Vancouver, so maybe it was just a better fit for him there. And that first round pick, who knows what it's like, but what's gonna turn out to if they miss the playoffs. Um, and uh, and also getting Engvall, some good additions to their team, but obviously that Barzal injury is just brutal because I mean those two deals, if you don't think about Barzal, puts their team as a contender to potentially, if they don't play Boston, they could beat Carolina in a 7 game series, potentially. But with that Barzal injury, I guess Horvat just takes that spot. And Engvall's a good pickup, especially for a third round pick. That's good value. And I think the Islanders made some good trades, but definitely a lot more to improve. They're kind of stuck in mediocre lane right now. They gotta figure out a way to climb out of there because they had 2 good years where they made the conference finals. They were so close to making the cup. And I, uh, I just think they got to they gotta figure out a decision soon enough. Um, Obviously with the Horvat signing, I think it kind of points you into the direction of trying to go all in for the cup within the next few years. But um, Islanders are in a tricky spot right now. They got to figure out what to do, and first they got to make the playoffs, and they're in a tough race for that playoff spot.
Yeah. Listen, the thing is about the Islanders is they're one of those teams where if they get in, they will give whatever team they play a hard time. I don't care which team it is. They are one of those hardworking teams that they've shown in the past when they haven't been favorites that they could kind of upset their way into a deep run. I'm not saying it's my prediction, but the fact that they were kind of in no man's land a little bit, I guess it's justified why they decided to go for guys like Bo Horvat because they decided that rather than absolutely blowing it up, they clearly weren't ready to do that. They're like, you know what? We might as well go all in a little bit, sacrifice our future, which I do think they gave up too much for Horvat. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that's going to help them get into the playoffs. And once they get there, it's a guy that's going to help them hopefully find their way to upset some teams and go on a. They could hypothetically go on a deep run. Not my prediction again, but like these are guys that are going to help them go further. So I don't think it was the worst decision in the world for them to a little bit mortgage their future for the now because they're a lot closer to being competitive than being in the Bedard sweepstakes. They're way out of that. So they might as well, in my opinion, when they're in that middle ground, a few points out, or I believe right now they're currently in a playoff spot, they might as well just try to make their way into a playoff spot and hopefully upset their teams on the way to hopefully doing something great for that team.
Yeah,
Mm.
I agree with you there. Yeah, not a horrible deadline for the Islanders. So it looks like we're gonna be switching off to Philly. It'll be a little bit of time for us because we're just running short on time, but for you guys, it'll be like not even a second. So yeah, we'll see you in a sec. All right. So next off we have Pittsburgh. Oh, we'll change the plan. So next off we have Pittsburgh. I have them as a B. I really don't think they made like major moves. They did trade for what's his name? They trade for Mikael Granlund for a second. I feel like it's a bit too much for Mikael Granlund getting paid 5 mil for the next how long is it? He's getting paid 5 mil for the next 3 years, including this one. So yeah, not the best trade. Nick Bonino, I kind of like it as you being a Pittsburgh fan in the past, having Bonino back, kind of nice. And then also getting Kulikov half retained for McGinn in the third, which they were looking to move McGinn, and they end up doing it, and get a player they want, a defense, which they need, and Kulikov.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like this deadline for them as well. I'm giving them a B plus actually. I don't think they gave up too much that they're absolutely going to be stressing about parting ways with. And they got, yes, he is expensive cap hit wise, but Mikael Granlund has enough of a resume of being a solid NHLer. Not so much. It didn't like his tenure in Nashville didn't really work so well. But how he was in Minnesota even before that, he was showing a lot of promise in the fact that they're getting this guy, slotting him into a bottom 6 position. It just gives them a lot more depth. And as you mentioned, getting Nick Vadino, a Penguins legend, who's formerly been a big part of cup runs, the fact that they're kind of reassembling this old team, I think it's very good for them. And they're not giving up too much that really makes me stress about what they've gotten, of obviously getting Dmitry Kulikov as well. It just gives them a lot more depth in terms of their defensive core. All these moves, they're depth moves. They got more depth on their offensive core, more depth on the defensive core. Didn't part ways with anything too crazy. So I think B plus is a fair place to put them.
And I'm gonna go with a B plus. Or sorry, I actually went with a C plus. A C plus. I say C plus. Because I just don't think the moves they made are gonna really help them go. I mean, obviously, they get better roster wise, and they as they add Benino, but you get a guy like Kulikov. You have to get who you have to give up a third and a four in a roster player for,
Well, they didn't
and
want
then
McGinn. They didn't want
and
McGinn
then you
anymore.
added and then
He
you
was on
add Nick
waivers.
Bonino, and then you add Nick Bonino, and then the Granlund trade is kind of horrible because he isn't himself. He isn't what he used to be. He's getting paid $5 million for more than a year. And you give up a second round pick, and then you also get rid of a solid third liner in Teddy Bluger. I don't love the deal for Pittsburgh, and I didn't love it in general. I won the C plus. Pittsburgh is realistically going to be a playoff team this year, but they're not going to do any damage to Boston. Realistically, they're not doing any damage to Boston or Carolina.
All right.
I
So
probably agree with that, but I don't know. I still think they got enough good moves, and they didn't lose anything totally crazy. I mean, yes, they gave up some draft picks, but at the end of the day, when last year they made the decision to re-sign Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, they knew they were sacrificing their future a little bit. They clearly weren't ready to go all in on a rebuild. So you might as well at least trade those assets for guys that are going to make you a deeper team today. And I'll argue that they are going to have a lot more of a fighting chance of upsetting one of those teams now after this deadline, as opposed to
True.
before they didn't really have any depth beyond their top line. So I do think I actually do like these moves, but I do acknowledge that they gave up some draft picks that could hurt them for the future. But no matter what, their future was a mess anyways. They're worried about today getting their big guys one more championship, and I don't think it'll happen. But at the very least, these moves get them closer to doing.
All right. So next up, we have the Philadelphia Flyers. I think they had a horrible trade deadline. They traded Isaac Radcliffe for future considerations, which yes, he isn't good, and yes, he isn't really good, but giving up a bottom six roster player for literally nothing, I just don't see the point of. And then I kind of like this trade, trading McEwen for Lemieux in a fifth. Um, didn't do much for them, but they got a fifth out of it, and just had to give up 425K in cap space, and then also trading Patrick Brown for a sixth, which was basically nothing. Yeah, that's why I gave them the D. Didn't really do much. They didn't trade JVR. They're supposed to, but Detroit backed out for some reason. I just don't think it was a good deadline at all. Chuck Fletcher, that was an L of a trade deadline for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And obviously, it would have been a lot easier to give them their flowers if they were to have finally gotten James Van Riemsdyk onto a playoff contender. And there was obviously a lot of interest out there. So the fact that they couldn't get anything done is disappointing. I'm giving them a D as well. As you mentioned, they made some minor trades that got them like fifth and sixth round picks. But they're a team that's absolutely all in on rebuilding, trying to go for Connor Bedard, trying to be a bad team so they get future assets that will make them good in the future. And nothing they did at this deadline really helps their chances of being that great unless they absolutely hit on these fifth and sixth round picks multiple years down the line. They didn't really get anything today, a second, a first round pick, whatever, that they could have gotten if they were willing to trade some of their top guys. They didn't get any of those assets. And as a result, it kind of was one of those deadlines where it's like, why are you staying stagnant if you had the opportunity to trade a lot of assets for futures? And they could have done it, but they chose not to. It's a D for me, might even be a D minus. It's just one of those disappointing ones, similar to a Florida, where at the very least they got the memo that the deadline was happening, but they just couldn't really get any of the big moves done.
Yeah, and I went with a D plus for Philly. Um, I'm not gonna say a D because Florida didn't make any move at all. Didn't make a move at all. And I gave him a D, so I'm gonna give Philly a D plus. That extra credit for at least making a few trades. In that being the Radcliffe trade, the McEwen trade, and the Patrick Brown trade. But they're a rebuilding team. They need to loot. They need to get draft capital. But they got a sixth, a fifth, and future considerations. And Brandon Lemieux, excuse me, for a few roster players. They really didn't get. They should have given up. Should have lost JVR. They should have lost Kevin Hayes. They should have. They needed to make a trade. Their defense. They have four top. They have four pretty good defensemen that would have gone them some decent value, especially considering the amount of value these other guys are getting. But um, they really didn't make any moves, and I was really disappointed in them for not taking that step to get closer to Bedard. Yeah, it was just a pretty bad trade deadline. Philly's in a bad spot.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's Chuck Fletcher seems to. I mean, I'm not saying it was their camp that like backed out of that trade. I obviously a lot of rumors seem to say it was Detroit that backed out of that last minute deal. But regardless, there seems to be a common habit of Chuck Fletcher not being able to get these deals done. A lot of stuff falling through. He's not really able to make the big moves when he needs to. And as a result, the position the Flyers are in isn't too surprising. So nothing more really needs to be said. They're a bad team, they're a brutal team, but this deadline didn't even set them up to be worse and help their future. It just kind of kept them very stagnant, which is very disappointing considering how much value they had in players that could have easily been flipped for first and second round picks.
Yeah. So unless you guys have anything to say, I'm going to move on to the Washington Capitals. I kind of like the deadline. I don't know if that's you guys liked it too, but I like your deadline. I gave them an A. I think they went kind of. Can't tell if they kind of went in the. They kind of went in the younger direction. Well, I can't tell. They went in the younger direction. They gave up some good players, but yeah, they went in the younger direction. Look to get younger. Look to for the future. And also, so first trade they traded Hathaway and Hathaway and Orlov. Yeah, they traded Hathaway and Orlov. They got Craig Smith first, third, second. Craig Smith was to make the cap work, so it doesn't really matter that much. But they got first, third, and second for Orlov and Hathaway, which looking at it now, not a bad trade. And then they trade Marcus Johansson, goes to a team he's already been to for like the second or third time in his career. I kind of feel bad for him. He's bounced around a lot, mostly around the same teams: Minnesota, Washington, New Jersey, those teams. And then they trade for Rasmus Sandin, Gustafson, and Boston's first. I think this is a really good trade for them. Getting Sandin, young guy, wasn't going to get much playing time in Toronto, so they get him, put him in the first line straight away because John Carlson's injured, and he puts up good points. As we said earlier, he got 3 assists in his first game with the Capitals, and they also trade Lars Eller, 31% retained. I don't know why 31%, probably to make the cap work for a second round pick. I think I like that a lot. I feel like maybe Lars Eller would maybe go for a bit less, but they trade a decent roster player. They get a second round pick out of it. They get more draft capital and they get younger, which I really like. Yes, they're not as good of a team, but I think they're looking more for the future in this trade deadline instead of looking more to get better like they did in past years.
Absolutely. I'm giving them as well an A minus or even an A. It's one of the two. And the main reason for that is obviously I'm judging this entire trade deadline, but I do really like the Rasmus Sandin trade for them. I do think it made sense from the Leafs perspective, which we already discussed. But from the Capitals perspective, they are basically giving up a 30-plus-year-old defenseman that wasn't going to be a big part of their future, as well as a very late first round pick, which is not their own. They don't currently own that pick, and they aren't that worried about Boston because chances are, unless something crazy happens, that pick will end up being late. So they are willing to package all of that. And they got a former first round pick defenseman that is starting to show a lot of signs of brilliance. And obviously, we showed it in that game, in the first game with the Capitals, where he had a fantastic game. But in general, it's not even for the nail that they have to be so concerned with him because he does like Rasmus Sandin isn't a perfect defenseman. He makes a lot of defensive mistakes, and that's why the Leafs unfortunately had to flip him out. But he, moving forward, has shown a lot of signs that he is legit. He is going to be a fantastic D-man moving forward. And the fact that they were willing to package up what they have right now and get their future to be a lot better in terms of the defensive end by getting Sandin I think it's a fantastic deal in general, getting a lot of trading a lot of depth players, getting second round picks and stuff like that. In the example of Lars Eller, these are all moves that are really going to help the Capitals' future. And with that being said, it's very clear that they knew what they wanted to do at this year's deadline. Worry about their future, worry about moving forward, and that's what they did. They traded a lot of current assets, current older assets, and had a great deadline. I'm giving it an A minus or an A.
I went with an A as well. I really like the moves they made. They knew which direction they were going. They were completely in check at this trade deadline. They made some really smart trades. They know they got some draft capital, and I think next year they're gearing up for one last cup run with OV. To me, they know this year it's not their year. They're gonna try not to make the playoffs, and maybe get a solid prospect, and then move on next year. Maybe get one more run in with OV, and that'll do it. For the Caps. But yeah, no, really like the Caps moves. The deadline, I'm going with an A.
Yeah, I agree with you. We all kind of said the same thing, with just them looking to get younger, and then them looking to get younger and getting more draft capital back from what they traded in past years. But yeah, they were we basically said everything we can about them. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. We were looking to bang out both conferences in one video, but that we were clearly very wrong. And
It's like 4 hours.
and this video being very long, like around an hour 45. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We will be back with a part 2, and then before the playoffs, we will be back again with our playoff predictions, like always, 30 in a row. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. We'll be back soon, like I said. See you in the next one. Peace.